that sense of courage certainly comes from having a teacher that makes it safe to reconnect with who you really are in terms of those talents and that brightness and that intelligence that you just referenced to, but also form enough of a trusting relationship with you so that it becomes safe enough to trust those qualities within yourself that never left, but you just protected.
Yeah, because I mean, we do experience have bad relationship with bad teachers, and sometimes we let it jade us, and we think that all teachers are a certain way. But I never took that perspective. I've always felt like I could learn from anyone, whether it's through a situation or through some words. So I never closed myself off to receiving what other people were giving me. So that's one thing that I'm thankful for not doing, because I would have missed on a lot of good things from teachers if I would have just closed myself off and kind of just shut down and lived to low expectations. I think when people set expectations that are high or something that a student can achieve, they will achieve them. But when you set the expectations really low, or just below a student or a little bit above, it doesn't challenge them to change. It doesn't give them anything to work towards, anything to want to improve on. So just to have teachers that have a different expectation, whether it's behavior-wise or academic-wise, is almost refreshing for someone. And when I had teachers that do that, it really changed my perspective, and it really changed how I looked at education and, as far as what I wanted to achieve for myself.
Well, and it sounds like you took that bar and you kept raising it higher and higher.
Yeah.
I mean, here you are sitting here with me and you have a master's degree in social work. You've taken your education further than my guess is you imagine that you would. And I know that you said to me in a previous conversation that this master's degree is really a degree that you really earned for yourself. This was a very important achievement to you. So I'm curious to think about the champions that you've had in your life, and you've made some recommendations to students to trust their own talents, their own skills, their own intelligence, and not to miss the opportunities that champions are providing for them by becoming jaded, for example. So I'm wondering, in terms of your wishes for a future, what are your wishes? If you were to have more of that experience of being championed but also championing others, what would your wishes be for having more of that?
I think my biggest wish is that we meet students where they are first, because I think as educators, as professionals, we see people for where they can be, where they're going, but we sometimes forget to meet them where they're at. And I think that's where that relationship and that trust is built, when you can meet a kid where he at, where he or she is, recognize what they're experiencing. Because a lot of these kids experience really rough times. And I learned that being a mental health counselor, is that a lot of these kids come from really rough backgrounds, and just making it to school takes a tremendous amount of courage. So once they get to school, we have to work with them and encourage them. And some of them need people telling them positive things, because some of these kids don't hear "I love yous," or that's not something the teachers probably feel comfortable doing, but they don't hear people that's encouraging them to do positive things. They don't hear people that's believing in them, believing that they can do anything they want, to be anyone that they want. So I think we have to kind of meet the kid where they at, build their rapport, build that relationship, and then set that expectation for them. Because I think kids want to achieve. They want to be great. They just don't know how. So, with me being in mental health, I want them to achieve, but I also want to know, this is where you at. I see you. I understand you. I know you. Then I can make that, because we call it joining in counseling. And it's very important to the therapeutic relationship is joining. And when you join with the child and join with the family and you make suggestions, they're more likely to take those. But if you never quite join with them, or you never build that relationship, you can suggest anything that you want, they won't receive it. So I think just joining, meeting them where they are, and then taking them to where they want to go is the best route.
Well, that certainly reflects your story. And Miss Tobey met you where you were. And there was a lot of trust that you described, and a lot of safety that was created so that you could believe her and believe yourself at the same time.
Definitely, definitely. Because we get mixed messages. And being a kid, now that I'm older, I can go back and conceptualize it and make sense of it. But as a kid, while you're experiencing that and experiencing the dozens other things, being a teenager or being a young person experiences, things get confusing and you don't understand certain things, and then it's just really hard to make sense of stuff. So I feel like as adults, our job is to make less confusion. We should make things less confusing as possible, and to really reach out to the child and build that relationship, because you'd be shocked that some of the things students come to good teachers they trust with, whether it could be sexual abuse, physical abuse, not having food at home. And those are the real things, the real problems that these kids experience, the real problems that they face. And to have someone they can trust and share those things with is unbelievably important. I think sometimes teachers underestimate that, because these kids have experienced relationships where they couldn't trust anyone. People disappointed them or let them down. They see teachers as almost parental figures, as adults, kind of reflecting some of the things that their parents reflect. And when teachers are able to be positive role models and give them a positive experience, I think they respond to them in ways that I don't think any of us could believe. I mean, almost like magic, for a child. So
you're describing how do you build bridges. So the story that you've shared of yourself is a story of critical teachers in your life helping to build the bridge to your future.
Definitely.
And you're describing your wish that adults in kids' lives, especially kids that are having very, very difficult and challenging lives, do the same. Step in there and listen to these kids, meet them where they are, and build bridges to a future that's quite different than where they currently are, but also a bridge that takes them where they want to go.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, because I had some experiences where the bridge was taking me to a place I didn't want to go to. And I think it's not just teachers, but administrators have to recognize students' will for self-determination and respect that. Because some students don't want to be on a track where they're going to get just a high school completion certificate. Some students want to be on a track where they want to get a high school diploma. Or some students want to be on a track where they're going to be in a situation where they're taking classes that can help them go to college. So I think we have to first ask the students what they want, not just give them a bunch of tests and say this is what you're going to get, but allow the student to self-determine what they want. And then once you understand what they want, to put a plan in place to help them to get what they want. And I think with me, when I decided to self-determine for myself, and I felt I was more vested into this track. This is where I want to go. I don't want to go over here. I want to go over here. How can you all help me get there? Instead of you're going to go over here and this is what we're going to do for you. I wasn't invested in that. And I think we need kids to be invested in their future, be invested in their education, and be invested in their decisions. I've sat in IEP meetings where the kid didn't say anything. Sometimes I almost feel like the kid didn't need to be there, or the parent. So I think we need to really let the parent and child really self-determine what they want to do and help support them along that journey.
Yeah. And within the child then learns to be a self-advocate, and we become the advocate to support that child in those aspirations.
Definitely.
Yeah, which is truly the power of championing.
Definitely.
Is when you can meet that person where they are, help them identify where they want to go, and then help shape that path for that to happen, and be that bridge that we want to be in education. So are there any other wishes that you would have that you'd want to share before we end our conversation today?
I also feel like there's a big elephant in the room, and it's dealing with race, which I feel like is really important, because when I was in school, our school was probably half black, half white, but we didn't have a lot of black teachers, a lot of black staff members. And for me, being a male and being African American, the teachers that you have to identify with are typically females, white females. And sometimes there can be some communication blockages, whether it's from the student or from the teacher. Sometimes there can be some challenges building that relationship, like you said, building that bridge and crossing it. Sometimes there's some challenges in setting limits on behaviors and students getting sent to the office for, little things. And I feel like that's something that we have to acknowledge, especially in today's age, and not just race now, but also sexual orientation. There's clients now or students now that's transgendered. How are we meeting the needs of that population? We have a lot of Hispanics. How are we meeting the needs of that population? And being more culturally competent. I don't think that was something when I was in school that was something that was either taught or something that was appreciated. But I feel like, now I think teachers really have to be culturally competent and really understand the culture and environment and, the place where these students come from. I talked to a friend last week, and he was telling me about a student that he's working with who's transgendered. And he was able to have the student bring his grades up from F's to A's and B's simply by identifying the student as the gender that they wanted to be identified at. So he identified them as a female, even though they were male. And just that alone was enough to get them to buy into what he wanted to do, what he wanted to help him improve his grades. So he had the student sit in his classroom with him, and all the students' work came to him in that classroom, and the student was able to improve his grades. And it was like we talked about earlier, it was a safe place. He knew this teacher would not let anybody pick on him or hurt him. He knew this teacher had expectations that, okay, if we do this, you're going to achieve at this level. So he had that. And the student felt like this teacher could identify with him. This teacher, believed in him. The teacher saw him for who he wanted to be and who he was. And I think that's what we have to be competent. We have to understand cultures. We have to understand those dynamics because, kids need to know and need to be identified with as who they are, not, who we want them to be or who we think they are.
That's really powerful because, I think about you and I think about your story of someone seeing you, someone accepting you where you were. Well, they were needing to accept all of you. You don't just show up with somebody who's interested in or becoming interested in learning again. You're bringing all of who you are into that classroom. All of your identity, your racial identity, your cultural identity, your religious identity, everything that comprises who you are, you're bringing into the classroom.
And I think and with Miss Tobey, we're different ages by far, and different races by far, and different genders.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, kids just want to be accepted. They just want to know that they're worthwhile people, that they're able to be who they want to be and develop who they want to be. But they really just want to be accepted by parents and by teachers because teachers are parental figures, whether we like it or not. For some of these kids, they don't have parents. Some of these teachers I identify with almost like a parental figure. At the March school board meeting, I identified Mr. Wright, who was my 4th grade teacher. He was my first African American male teacher. And when I had his class, even though he was my teacher, he was an older adult. I almost like identified him as a father, because he was an adult that was in a role of authority. Maybe
for schools to be more thoughtful about how they build those relationships. Your 4th grade teacher Mr. Wright was really important in your life as somebody who was a male, so you had the same gender, but also was African American, so he was your same race. So you had a certain connection there. And we know that relationships are born out of a range of different kinds of connections. So if we were more thoughtful about how we did that in schools, it would be functioning as a facilitator as opposed to a barrier.
Definitely.
Yeah. Anything else in terms of wishes? I really appreciate your courage in bringing that out.
And also, I just wish that teachers know that, they are appreciated and that students do care about them. There were so many teachers that I wanted to buy things for and to recognize and to support. I mean, I picked 7 teachers in particular, but I can think of dozens of teachers right now who supported me along the journey, who were positive, motivators in my life and had a positive influence. And I just want you to know that, just keep doing those positive things and that you do make an impact, a lasting impact on students' life that goes beyond those 12 years of formal education, even to when, they're adults. So just make a positive impact, give them positive statements, positive things to build on. Try to be strengths focused, because I think the kids know what they're not doing right or what they're doing wrong. but sometimes they just need to know, what they're doing right, what they continue to do right, and not just being focused on the negative.
Thank you for that. And thank you for reminding teachers of the big impact they're having on children's lives, not just in those 12 years that they're under their instruction and the responsibility, but into the future as well. And to stay positive, not just for kids' sake, but also for their own sake. Because it's being in the field of education today it's hard work, to be sure. So to have you come back and say thank you to teachers, I know in the case of the teachers that you recognized on the school board meeting in March, it made a big difference for them.
It did.
And I understand that there are more teachers who you want to say thank you to and are looking for opportunities to say thank you to you too. So a thank you from a teacher myself for sharing your story, and I really appreciate your time and your willingness to share that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sidney.